Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of All Angles. I'm Dion Jackson-Miller, and a special welcome to our viewers on onespotmedia.com. Two issues for you this evening. First up, the traffic nightmare on the Palisades Strip on Monday night. We have in studio with us for this segment the town clerk, Robert Hill. And later on, Jamaica's recent controversial vote on Jerusalem at the United Nations. How does a small country position itself in the world today, especially with the current occupant of the White House? First, though, here's TVJ's Anthony Lugg with this overview on the Palisades gridlock.
This is what frustration looked like for persons trying to get to and from the Norman Manley International Airport on Monday evening. It was total chaos. And the reason? A New Year's Day event being held at the Gunboat Beach, which saw vehicles parked improperly along the roadway, causing headaches and major traffic delays.
I've got some of these kids are playing now, and the police should be better than this. Stupid idea, you understand?
Police trying to escort vehicles to the airport also had challenges. And for those who weren't so lucky, they had to walk with their luggage due to the massive gridlock which stretched for miles. The traffic was so intense that even this police vehicle trying to access the soft shoulder could not do so, as vehicles were parked just about anywhere. One example, this vehicle that was stuck in bushes and had to be pushed by 4 men.
Poorly organized. It was poorly organized. They must reconsider this next year. The venue, where they're using the venue. Try and find a better location or for the place where, or perhaps what they could do, have the cars parked elsewhere and have a shuttle bus take the patrons to their location.
But vehicles parked improperly weren't the only thing causing the traffic nightmare, but also a group of persons partying along the roadway. And according to one visitor, better traffic management was needed.
Yeah, last year I parked about here and we walk about a mile up the road. And it was good. Just let people park and let the airport people treat. You can't have people coming to catch their flight and, coming in for a flight and they're congested. We was in the traffic for an hour and a half. 1.5 hours still up in the traffic till we decided to just get out of the car and that was it.
That theory seemed to be true, as police personnel dispatched hours later managed to get the traffic moving freely. When contacted, Assistant Commissioner of Police Kevin Blake, who's the commander in charge of the corporate area, conceded that there might not have been a large enough police presence initially at the venue.
We had a challenge with the source because of the situation around the I think we not the anticipated number of police personnel were present, and so that helped in increasing the problem.
Operations at the airport were also affected as some airlines reportedly delayed their flights in order to accommodate the stranded passengers. Persons question what led to the breakdown and who should be held accountable. Is it the police, the KSAMC, or the promoters of the event? In order for an amusement license to be granted by the police and the KSAMC, a promoter is expected to provide the authorities with the following information: the type of event being held, the nature of the event, as well as the number of people expected to be in attendance. The promoters would also need to obtain special permits from the Jamaica Fire Brigade, Jamaica Music Society, as well as a spirits license. The Fire Brigade, in granting its permit, would then visit the venue and conduct its checks to ensure adequate entry and exit points, recommend the number of safety fire marshals needed for the event, and notify the nearest fire station. But our checks with the Fire Brigade revealed that they were not aware of the event and no fire safety permit was granted. So how did the promoters manage to obtain a permit without the safety of the venue being assessed? That question is yet to be answered. Also, for the granting of an amusement license, TVJ News understands that the Police Traffic Division should be notified. However, that didn't seem to have been done based on this response from SSP Calvin Allen during an interview with our news team on Tuesday.
Initially, we thought it was just movement of vehicular traffic, people coming from the airport or going to the airport, until we learned afterwards that it was a function, a social event that was being held, which was causing the problem. So I had was to pull resources from as far as the North-South Highway and other areas to see how best we could assist at that point.
Well, lots of people seem to be running for cover on this one. Difficult right now to get anybody to talk to us, except the KSA, okay, I'm going to give you a piece of completely unsolicited advice. There was no need to change the acronym, and this acronym you're all using now is hard to say. We should have stick with KSAC. Completely unsolicited. But the town clerk, Robert Hill, is clearly the man to talk to in terms of what happened there. That concern about no fire check. So how is an amusement license granted without that?
Well, first of all, Dion, let me express my thanks for inviting me on the program, and also express on behalf of the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation, otherwise known as KSAMC, how regrettable this entire experience, in fact, has been. Certainly for visitors, airline passengers, airline staff, airport staff itself. Now, as it relates to the fire permit inclusion, that specifically under the place of amusement regulations looks at when we are licensing a building and grounds. In this particular case, it was the grounds only, right? So there was no need specifically to invite a fire personnel on ground, because that would have been taken care of under the police permit as far as we see it.
The police permit, though, and I was talking to your mayor a little earlier on radio, and I'm trying to understand the to and fro, because he says it's not customary for the KSAC to liaise with the police when granting amusement licenses, that the police permit is needed, but that you don't necessarily know what it is they plan to do. Is that...
Let me try and elaborate. If you want me, I can just go through the process itself. So an applicant comes, a promoter comes in with an application. He expresses his view, his wish, his desire, that he would want to host an event of a particular size. There are various things that we look at, particularly the location, the type of building and grounds, the size of the event, the expected size of the event. Is it going to be near residential areas, business areas? Is it going to impede traffic? Is it going to impede emergency responses? All of those things. In this particular case, we looked at the venue once the application was submitted by the promoter. Our team went and visited the site, did a thorough investigation and inspection. And the first thing that came out of us was that there was no adequate arrangement for parking. And we specifically stated that we would not be granting the license unless you can prove to us that parking is going to be secured elsewhere, because we are not going to grant a license to allow parking on the street. Shortly thereafter, the promoter came back with evidence that there is an agreement between himself and the NMIA, Norman Manley International Airport, which provided a parking area on their facility on Port Royal Road, which is now below the roundabout, below the airport, so would now not impede inbound or outbound traffic from the airport. With that, we said, fine, we're satisfied with that. Along with that, also was submitted a police permit, right? The police, as Mayor would want to, was alluding to earlier, we would not get into their security plan, their crowd control plan, their traffic plan, because we have total confidence in them. We have worked with them for generations. Several large events have been held right across the municipality, and this has never happened. Once we got the sign-off from the area superintendent, we were satisfied that everything was in place for this party to be held. On top of which, the promoter followed our advice and instructions and advertised that parking would be available and shuttle service would also be available, and that anybody found parking on the road would be towed away.
Given, though, that this was an event, I understand, that created problems last year, albeit not of that magnitude, it sounds like it would have required extra scrutiny, extra watchfulness, extra vigilance, and more stringent conditions. The
issue with last year that we did not strictly prohibit that parking on the street, and that's what caused the problem. So we tried to avert that issue and that mistake this year by ensuring that there was adequate parking elsewhere provided, so that there would be no imposition on the traffic to or from the airport. But the enforcement side of things clearly fell down.
Let me go back to the fire issue, because I understand you're saying that's for when there is an event in a building, so a nightclub or something like that, right? And I can understand that in terms of the checks for the exits and so on and so forth. But surely even at an open-air event, there is still the risk of some kind of, whether explosion, fire, whatever it is. So isn't that a gap though? Because even if you have an open air event, you still have the risk of things like stampedes and so on. So where does that come in?
Well, again, we would have relied on the crowd control expertise of the police, and also because the event would have been in close proximity to a responsive fire station, particularly Port Royal or within the confines of Harbourview or East Kingston, right? But because we are reliant largely on the underground expertise of the police for crowd control, traffic management, and security, we would have been confident enough to ensure that these things would have been adhered to.
What changes now going forward to ensure that this doesn't happen again? A large
lesson has been learned here, Dion. Our first initial step that we're not going to be granting any licenses for that strip in the immediate future. We're going to be going into dialogue with the other agencies to look at all the issues, if I may use your term, all angles, looking at how best we now coalesce and work closer together to ensure that a repeat of this never happens again. The Honourable Minister and Mayor and myself and another set of persons met immediately first thing on Tuesday morning, first working day of the year, to reassess initially and look at these issues. And we all agreed that any impact on traffic or movement going to or from Norman Mile International Airport is a no-no, and so we're going to be looking at that. We, at the same time, want to counterbalance that, though, with the growing, expansive entertainment industry that persons are investing in. We don't want to choke that. Any major city across the world owns and protects and supports investment in entertainment and culture. So we have to counterbalance those things and have them work together seamlessly. By the way, ensuring that the regulations, law and order, and discipline is maintained, because that is going to be a major factor in the calculus in how we now grant licenses going forward, and ensuring that the multi-agency approach is tightened before we grant that license.
Does this then doom in the near future any activity for the so-called entertainment zone that has been declared?
It does not, simply because if we look at taking the lessons from this, albeit the excuse can be made that it is well beyond the airport, but it is still one way into Port Royal and one way out by road. So we have to assess those factors. We have to assess the size of the venue. We have to assess the type of event that people want to put there. And we also have to look at alternatives. If it just can't happen, it just can't happen there, right? But at the same time, we do not want to stifle an industry because we don't want to look at alternatives. We don't want to have that conversation. I believe that we should have that conversation and start to propose alternatives as we grow out and take the experiences and the mistakes that we have learned from this.
You say you don't second-guess the police because they have the expertise, you've been working with them for years and so on. Does this event, though, undermine that confidence and suggest the need for a different approach?
No, I would never want to undermine any relationship that we have with the police. What we need to look at is take the lessons from this experience and sharpen how we do what we do in granting these licenses. So
do you not want to see the plan? Do you not want to hear them say we're going to have 50 people out there or 100 people or this is what we do?
We would ask those necessary questions.
But you haven't in the past?
We have in the past. I'm not saying no. But in this case, a larger conversation could have been had. But we always are reliant on the expertise of the police. And because we got that evidence supported by the police and NMIA, we decided to go ahead. So in this case, learning from this experience and going forward, some other questions naturally are going to emerge, and we're going to ensure that we dot those I's and cross those T's.
Okay, and we'll be looking out for the dots and the crosses, but we have to leave it there for now. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Town Clerk Robert Hill talking to us there. Stay tuned. When we come back, Jamaica and the Jerusalem vote and our place in the world. Stay tuned. We'll soon come.